The main benefits of these lifts, they train ranges of motion effectively that are not often trained.
You check out some of the old videos from Arnold. He was doing pullovers, he was doing stiff leg deadlifts in large ranges of motion.
When we think about the previous eras, like the 50s and before, by golly, they just worked hard and were tough and they got good results even though they didn't know what was going on. The reality is they were extremely sophisticated. The Jefferson curl was invented in the 1800s.
By Thomas Jefferson.
The silver era guys just called it stiff leg deadlift. The conventional deadlift was more for strength athletes who wanted to build more power, and they felt like the stiff leg deadlift was better for the muscles.
Any unilateral lifts that you could recommend?
One-hand snatches, which I think are a very underrated lift.
What are his key training methods to perform one-arm deadlifts?
With any of these new exercises you're unfamiliar with, I really recommend incorporating it into the end of your workout, just kind of as a cool down, playing around after your serious work is done.
All right, man. Give it to us straight. What's some of the benefit of some of these weird lifts that you're always doing on Instagram?
Okay, well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I'm stoked to be here. I mean, this is crazy, because I'm a guy who lifts weights in the parking lot, or at least that's how I thought of myself until recently. This was just a hobby. I lifted weights and gradually got in a little bit deeper than I thought I would be. So, I mean, in answer to what's the benefit of it? Well, just some random guy who used to be just, a lifter like many other lifters is now here. But let's get a little more specific. The main benefits of these lifts, they train ranges of motion effectively that are not often trained. Okay, so we have a lot of people that are into, various forms of flexibility, mobility training, various stretching, yoga, things of that nature, and that's all well and good. But as far as actual like weightlifting, loaded resistance training, there's not as much of it in these deep ranges that some of these lifts like, the Jefferson curl, certain pullover variations offer. And so that's something that, was at one time a big component of weightlifting.
I want to interrupt just for half a second here. Is you check out some of the old videos from Arnold. He was doing pullovers. He was doing stiff leg deadlifts in large ranges of motion. And Arnold was not known for, even though he's known for being one of the best bodybuilders of all time, he wasn't known for being stiff.
Right.
It actually looked like his body moved quite well. And it looked like a lot of those guys, even in those years, maybe the 70s, 80s, they were still practicing maybe more ranges or deeper ranges of motion than maybe we got into in like the 90s and the 2000s and stuff like that.
Absolutely. When we're looking at the golden era guys, they were trained by the silver era lifters. So they had all the, they were using the same practices in a lot of cases, maybe adapting them, certainly obviously pioneering new practices, but a lot of what they were doing was, silver era bodybuilding. You especially look at guys like Tom Platz just demonstrating, that extraordinary mobility. You've seen the pictures of him stretching. And Arnold, Arnold loved, spinal flexion.
Yeah.
So much range. And that was kind of a big component of silver era bodybuilding that I think a lot of people have maybe forgotten. When we think about the previous eras, like the 50s and before, I think a lot of how it often gets presented is, these guys didn't know much. They didn't have much equipment, but by golly, they just worked hard and were tough and they got good results, even though they didn't know what was going on. But the reality is they were extremely sophisticated. There was a lot more complexity than we often give them credit for. And those guys were athletes in all dimensions. Obviously, they were very physically strong. Obviously, they built, huge muscles, but they were also extremely flexible. You'll see their pictures of John Grimek, one of the all-time greats at both weightlifting and bodybuilding, doing a full front split while, holding weights overhead. And that, I think that was the norm rather than the exception. One of the movements that I'm known for pushing the envelope on is the Jefferson curl. I demonstrated that earlier.
Haven't you done like the most weight ever in one of these lifts? I saw you in one of your videos. You had like a world record at the time. I don't know if it's official world record or.
That's what I'm going to get into because I don't think so. As far as the modern era, I would say yes. Now, some people have done heavier weights, like with bent legs. I don't know if that necessarily counts. It's not a competitive lift. Who knows what the technique is, right?
Legs were bent, cheater.
So, so as far as what we know in the modern era, yes. Because the Jefferson curl, let me just tell the story of it. It's kind of interesting because we
just want to mention real quick that we're live and people, keep pouring in the questions for us. We're going to get to you guys in a moment. Go ahead.
Yeah. Now this one you have up on screen, I'm not even sure I like to count it because I was a little bit sloppy. I shifted my foot early on. I didn't keep my leg straight throughout. But,
yeah, Andrew was
whatever.
not a fan of that lift. He was pretty pissed.
Yeah, I could see the like the angle and the degree of everything. I mean, we'll let it slide this one time.
I'm pretty happy with my 355, but
God, dude.
Unbelievable, man. It's unbelievable.
But I don't know that that's the heaviest ever, because what I found out recently, I didn't know this, but apparently the Jefferson curl was actually one of the more popular back exercises for silvery or bodybuilders. The reason I didn't know this was it wasn't called that. Apparently it got there was some confusion over the name. The way we've traced this back, so the Jefferson curl was invented in the 1800s, and it's funny. I'm actually blanking
By Thomas Jefferson.
I wish. No, because I say that because I'm blanking on the name right now. A guy who on Instagram, Shane Green Strongman, really cool account to follow. He gets really into the history of this stuff. He finally dug up the secret origin of the Jefferson curl. And Charles Ramsey, that's the guy's name, I believe. I could be wrong. And I should forget it because apparently the reason we don't know about him is because he asked in his will not to be mentioned. So maybe I shouldn't have said that. So that's why it in most of the old texts, you won't see it listed with any name. In some Bronze Era texts, it's just like presented as an exercise. It was you can tell it was commonly done, but it didn't really have a specific name. I think at some point in possibly the 70s, someone got it confused with Charles Jefferson. I guess Charles Ramsey, Charles Jefferson. They got that confused.
Yeah, and that's what comes up first on Google, actually, is Charles Jefferson.
Yeah, but I don't think he ever had anything to do with it. I think there was just a confusion about which Bronze Era guy originated it. So I think that was somewhere in powerlifting in the 70s. That's all I know. I got that from U.S. Olympic gymnastics coach Christopher Summer, who basically is the reason why we know that exercise at all. He found it in a old powerlifting text and started using it with his athletes, and then shared it with the broader fitness community. If it weren't for that, we would have no idea about it. So that's where we know it from. But it was never called that back in the day. So what I found out is the silver era guys just called it stiff leg deadlift. Now they were not doing it like our modern stiff leg deadlift, which is kind of a lot more like an RDL. They were doing just like what I showed earlier on the platform. They're up on a platform. Full spinal flexion, fully straight legs, hamstring stretch. And according to some articles I found by John Grimek, apparently a lot of, I think it was considered preferable to bodybuilders over the conventional deadlift at that time. Like the conventional deadlift was more for strength athletes who wanted to build more power. And they felt like the stiff leg deadlift was better for the muscles, which it's a full range of motion, exercise for those muscles. You're taking the spinal erectors, the hamstrings through a huge range of motion. And in those articles, they were also mentioning that it seemed to be beneficial for health. They mentioned that, a lot of people complain about having bad backs and that this exercise, helps with that. So it has a rich history of usage, and all that to say, I am sure that I haven't lifted the heaviest ever. I mean, I'm sure John Grimek, he had to have done, crazy weights that can't even be imagined. That guy was just an absolute phenomenon. And so many of these silver guys were just strong beyond belief. So no, I definitely haven't done the heaviest ever. We just don't know what the heaviest ever is because there's some issues with history. But
curious real quick, just about your progress with the Jefferson. When you started the Jefferson curl, was your spine locked up? Like, did you have struggle actually doing the movement, or were you always able to move into that range of motion?
Oh no. Yeah. I had issues getting my spine to do that. Like a lot of people, oh yeah, Tasha, nice. I like a lot of people, I could round the upper portion,
thoracic spine. And stuff
I could round the upper portion just fine, but there's like a flat portion in the low back, and that's what I see with a lot of people. I mean, some people you try to teach the Jefferson curl to, they'll be like, and then do a hip hinge, right?
Yeah.
I'm getting away from the mic trying to demonstrate, but yeah, I mean, some people. And it's funny. It tends to be people are either mobile in their spine or they're mobile in their hamstrings. So a lot of people that have really good hamstring mobility will use that to just never bend their spine at all. And then when you ask them to deliberately round their spine, they can't do it.
Yeah.
And then other people are more, locked up in the hamstrings, but they can move their spine a little bit better. And that was me starting out. So I had to work more on hamstring mobility. But yeah, especially in earlier videos, you can definitely see that I had a lot of kind of lock up in that lower area.
Mentioning that with the double kind of Zercher position, that you couldn't really get into position for that early on. but you could get into kind of more like the single arm, right?
Right. I mean, my background, I was just, what you might call a power builder. I mean, I wasn't a serious power lifter, but I did just a lot of squat, bench, and deadlift, and some bodybuilding accessories, and I just didn't do any mobility exercises. So yeah, I couldn't do a full Zercher deadlift from the floor, and that's where you just hook your elbows under the bar on the floor. I couldn't do that at the start because I just wasn't that mobile. And yeah, I had to build a lot of mobility both in the hamstrings, and the hips, but also the low back. And not the Jefferson curl it covers a lot of bases. It does a ton of stuff well, but it's not a one-stop shop for all that. I had to get into some more specialized variations to both increase my hamstring mobility, increase that really low back mobility, and there's some actual specialized Jefferson curl variations that help with that. I was able, doing the Jefferson curls just by themselves, I was able to work up to pretty good weight, but my range wasn't nearly as good as it is now.
Yeah.
I had to work with Lucas Hardy of Range of Strength. I mean, he's kind of the expert at, well, it's plenty of mobility experts, but he's really good about combining it with actual strength. And,
what do you think
lifting.
about kind of shifting the mechanics of the body around a little bit with weight? So I did see you outside, you pick the weight up off the ground and then put it on your legs as you got into a squat position, and then you Zerchered it from there. So let's just say that somebody has a mobility issue. Could they hypothetically do a Zercher squat with the weight propped up, or they prop it up on their knees? And do you think that the downward motion and getting some repetitions could help kind of get their body to adjust over time as they sort of like gently go through these positions that they otherwise wouldn't be able to reach, except for when they have a counterbalance of weight to sort of, I don't want to say force, because I don't want people to think that you want to do this really aggressively. But what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, just like you said, kind of that nuance of just being really clear about what we're talking about, so we're not getting people to just try to force into something that they're not ready for. That's so important to bring, because you can absolutely do too much of this. But I mean, yeah, weighted stretching it's extremely effective. Obviously, you don't want to do too much. You don't want to rush into it too quickly. But I mean, I think especially for people like me who have more of a background in strength and no mobility, using weight to help pull us into deeper ranges can be very, very beneficial. You can definitely do too much, but I mean, this is a little secret, behind the scenes, little behind the scenes, the reality, Instagram and the reality, candid thing. I can't actually do a Jefferson curl the way I do, where I can actually get the plates down to touch the floor with less than 300 pounds on the bar. I need that much weight to be able to get down that far. So, obviously the weight can be, extremely beneficial in unlocking those ranges. But I mean, it does, those gains that I've made do translate to unweighted. It's much easier for me now to do, palms to floor pikes and all that stuff. So it does translate back and forth. And please don't anyone think that I'm saying just go pull yourself down with 315. I am not saying that. I started off with the empty bar, and that might be too much for many people. I recommend starting with less than that. I recommend starting with your body weight, just feeling out the movement with body weight, and then slowly adding just a tiny increments. People are scared of loaded flexion, but what if you just picked up one of the 2.5 pound plates? Would that be so scary? You can do that. There's no rule against it. You can use a 5 pound dumbbell, a 15 pound dumbbell. In Alan Calvert's 1923, I believe, Super Strength, which did include the Jefferson curl, not by that name, but just listed as an exercise, his recommendation, I believe, was that healthy young men would start with 15 pounds and, work up to maybe 100 or so. So, I mean, throughout history, recommendations have been fairly similar. I found John Grimek saying something like 25 to 35 pounds. I say either an empty bar or less. So like the recommendations have stayed very consistent throughout time. You got to start with lightweight. Please do not get in there and start throwing plates on. That is not what anyone is saying. You have to be patient with this. You have to work in so slowly. But yes, if you do it correctly, loaded stretching can absolutely help you access the. Yeah. Additionally,
where the weight is matters a lot too. So if you hold like 25 pounds in your hands, that's one way to load it. If you had a sandbag that it was 30 pounds, that's another way to load it. And you had it like in the crooks of your elbows. Right. If you had a weighted vest on, for some of these things, like a weighted vest, that's pretty light. That's maybe only like 10% of your body weight. might be a pretty good place to start, because it's going to be real gentle, and the loading pattern is going to be real gentle. It's not going to be anything that's going to overly force you into a position where you could potentially get hurt.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, the name of the game is a gentle introduction. We're not trying to be hardcore, tough guys, anything like that. We're trying to get people healthy without getting them hurt. That's the goal.
All right, let's get to these questions real quick. James Gallegos asks, based on his style of training, what are his key training methods to perform one-arm deadlifts and Turkish get-ups? Knowing my shoulders, I'd hesitate to do something like that to get up. So what are those beginner-level steps to take?
Okay, so with the one-arm deadlift, I mean, again, it's all about loading. If you have access to, say, the 10-pound bumper plates at your gym, that's an excellent way to just get a feel for the movement. Just work on the technique at first, seeing how you feel with a with that different stance. Just feel out the balance of it. A lot of people try to treat it just like a conventional deadlift, where they're setting up completely with their feet completely centered on the bar. With the one-hand lifts, you need to actually set it up offset so that the center of the bar is a little bit closer to the lifting side foot, so that you're in balance. Just play around with the balance. With any of these new exercises you're unfamiliar with, I really recommend either incorporating it into the end of your workout, just kind of as a cool down, playing around after your serious work is done. Or, in some cases, you might want to just use it as a warm-up. I think Turkish get-ups work fairly well as a warm-up. You don't have to use any heavy weight. Just use a light weight. They're good for warming up your shoulder, your back. Just get familiarity with the movement. If it feels good, you can push the weight. But if not, it's just something that you can get your body warm with, right? So with all of these, I wouldn't recommend pushing the weight until you've just played around with them, either in your warm up or your cool down for a while, just to get familiarity. And when something starts, it's good to budget some time for experimentation into your training. I consider it like research and development. Just to have a little bit of time in your training where you're playing around with stuff. It doesn't always have to end up being something that's going to be your key movement that you're going to get a ton of gains out of. But, you try 10 movements, you might find one that surprises you. And if it isn't that movement, like let's say Turkish get-ups, for whatever reason, there's a lot going on there. You could have shoulder issues in either shoulder, since you're, both shoulders are active, that make it something that you probably don't want to go heavy on. If it doesn't work, do it. If, one-hand deadlift is stressing something, it's actually a fairly gentle movement on the low back, actually, because number one, the weight is just lighter than you'd be using on a conventional or sumo. And number two, you're a little bit more upright, because you're actually bending one shoulder down, but your stance is a little bit more upright. It's a little bit more, the bounce is a little bit more like that of a trap bar deadlift or a Jefferson deadlift. So you're not bending over quite as far. So that can be a little bit more gentle. And on top of that, you're getting a little bit of off-center action for the QLs, which are the cause of a lot of people's back pain. So you're, not only using something that could be a little bit gentler on the low back, you're also, doing something that can potentially benefit that, like, a little bit of stabilization for the QL in that, in that side-to-side action. Because mostly we just hinge forward and back. We're not doing any kind of side-to-side training. It's obviously it's not going to be as effective for that particular thing as like a suitcase deadlift or something, but you're still getting a little bit of side-to-side action there. So, if you play around with that, you might be pleasantly surprised that it actually feels good and you can push it. But if it doesn't, no reason for that.
You're probably wondering, why am I wearing these glasses? Well, it's because I'm being bathed in blue light. And blue light isn't necessarily bad. There's blue light in the sun. But if you're in your office, if you're indoors, if you're in front of a screen during the daytime, it's not a great idea to have your eyes being bathed by blue light all day long. That's why EMR Tech, a company that we've partnered with, has blue light daytime glasses and blue light blocking evening glasses. These glasses right here are meant for you to wear during the daytime when you're in front of screens, etc. But if you're outside, take the glasses off and get the natural sunlight. And if you're at home in the evening when sun sets and you need to be in front of the TV or you need to be in front of your computer or on your phone, these glasses are the ones to get. They also have the best red light therapy devices on the market. If you stand in front of any of EMR Tech's red light therapy devices, you will actually feel how much stronger the output of the red light is on those devices versus any of the competitors. They also have some of their smaller red light devices like their Fire Wave, Fire Dragon, and Fire Storm. And then if you want to get some of their bigger panels, they have their Fire Hawk, which is their biggest panel, and the Inferno panel. These are literally the best red light therapy devices on the market. And if you want to save on them, Andrew, how can they do that?
Yes, you got to head over to emrtech.com. That's emr-tech.com. And at checkout, enter promo code PowerProject to save 20% off your entire order. Again, that's emrtech.com, promo code PowerProject. Links in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
Turkish get-up is such a great exercise, and it's really just entails getting off the floor, right? And there's many ways to do it. You know, if you're more skilled, then maybe you need less touch points to try to figure out how to maneuver off the ground. If you're more skilled, then maybe you use various amounts of weight or different implements, and then that makes it more challenging to get off the floor. But just what a great exercise to do in between another exercise. So I think for myself, I've been, doing explosive movements, been doing some jumps, been doing some mobility stuff. Turkish get-up is one that I should incorporate. I could just kind of envision doing that in the middle of a workout. Could be a back workout, chest workout. Could still be a meathead style workout.
Right.
But I could still utilize some movements like that in between. And when you do stuff like that, you kind of forget how challenging it is. You're like, shit, this is just getting down and off the ground.
Yeah, it's a hard one.
Repeatedly. And then, if you're doing it with weight and you're doing it, executing it properly, it's a difficult movement.
I've seen it get bashed a lot recently on social media. So I do want to kind of address what I see the use for. Because, people are bashing it maybe from a bodybuilding perspective or just like kind of asking, what is it good for? Like, what does it do? And there are a bunch of answers to that, obviously. I think
makes sense to ask that question if you're 20 years old. You know what I mean? 25, and you're like, man, I'm fit. Like, and we've talked about this with walking before. When you're young, you're like, well, I don't really see what the point of a walk is.
Like, I don't hate the question because, at a certain point, you should ask, well, okay, what muscle is that training? And not that that's the only goal you can have in bodybuilding. In fitness, obviously, there are tons of other goals, but, it's good to kind of address that. So, I do think that, there's a ton of benefit to just, moving your body through space. Obviously, I do feel a lot better. I found that if I have back injuries, that can be a really helpful way to get back into movement. Just something about that unilateral load, combined with some ab action. I've always found ab work to be helpful recovering from low back injuries. So that can be very helpful. But as far as a top end like training stimulus, I think it's underrated as an actual shoulder developer. Now, you have to load it up to make that happen, but if you do load it up, it can be a way to get your shoulders exposed to pretty heavy weight for some pretty good time under tension, and it's not completely static. You're moving through a variety of ranges of motion. Obviously, you're not actively, pressing the weight, but you're still stabilizing. It can be a fairly heavy weight, for a lot of time under tension with a lot of little micro contractions in there. And I think that can actually be an underrated, even muscle builder. I know my side delts are always very sore once I push the weights. You hear all the time these days, natties can't build big. I don't want to bring that up if you guys don't want me to, but it's just a dumb myth that you hear in social media. Natties can't build big delts, right? Well, that was never an issue back in the day. The guys before steroids were ever invented had massive delts. They look great, and what do? They spend a ton of time putting really, really heavy weights overhead. And I think there's something to that, especially for that that side delt that people, all we can do is lateral raises. Okay, maybe that's why you're struggling. Maybe just lifting some heavy weights overhead has an effect that people aren't realizing now. Am I saying the Turkish get up is necessary for big shoulders? No, but it is one way to achieve that objective. There are plenty of others, but I'm not going to just write it off as something with no training value. Obviously, it's a lot to get some weight overhead. It's going to be niche. I'm not saying like I'd take a beginner and say, okay, you want to build big shoulders, your first exercise is the Turkish get up. But I do think for serious lifters, there's actually a use case for it. Even outside of this like functional ability to get up off the ground, which it's a good thing to be able to do.
Right.
All right. Quick super chats. Hayden Pratt asks, what's the best way to incorporate conditioning? Have a dedicated day or just work it in? So how's it that you do that? Do you do any conditioning right now?
No, I don't. it's not that I am against it. I'm not saying you can't do conditioning, but it's just not. It hasn't reached a high enough level to get training priority. I mean,
it doesn't seem like you rest a whole lot in between sets, because when you were out there, you were kind of. I mean, I don't know if that's because we were filming and you were trying to get to the top sets quickly, but it looked like you don't really take a long rest in between your sets.
I'm used to working out between nap times. I mean, I'm working out with my kids. My kids are 2 and 4. I'm usually trying to get my workout done while they're napping, so I try to push through it. So that's probably what I'm used to. I've got too much else that I'm trying to train. I mean, if I'm bulking, if I'm in hypertrophy mode, I'm booked. I've got too much time taken up, and if I'm cutting and I'm more focused on mobility, there's a ton there, and it's just not a training priority for me. That said, I incorporate a lot of exercises that probably do a little bit of that. If you do high rep sets of Zercher deadlifts, you'll build a little bit. So I don't do any dedicated conditioning. And now that being said, I do like hike all the time with my kids. So, I might be going up a small mountain with a, toddler in the carrier, maybe even a toddler on my back if she won't walk, even though she's really good at walking. But
and if it's just to lean out, honestly, just getting a lot of steps can make a big difference. I'm not sure, Hayden, if you your goal is increasing your conditioning level or just like dropping some body fat, but like if you make it a goal to get 10, 15, 18,000 steps a day, you'd be surprised in terms of like what that does to your body composition over time if you keep your food where it is. So
yeah, you stay consistent with those steps, and you don't have like one day where you do 15, the next day you do 15, 6. And then 10, and then 8. You try to hammer out that same amount every day. So whatever amount someone can kind of achieve, I think is a really good place to start, that extra output.
Yeah. And Nsima, you said like keeping your diet where it is currently, and then adding a little bit more steps. Is steps in that range that you said, so like somewhere between 10,000 and 15,000? Is that enough to kind of cause that cascade of effects where like you're moving more and all of a sudden now you're hungrier? Like, so is that enough to kind of push someone over the edge where they're now looking at their plate like they just can't wait to eat and they might potentially overeat?
A lot of people will feel hungrier if they start getting more steps. Most people are usually getting around like 5,000 to 7,000 steps a day, especially if they're working a desk job. And, the only time that they get some steps in is either at lunch or in the morning, or maybe a little bit in the evening if they go to the gym. So they're not ending up with many steps. And if they make a diligent effort to go out and double or triple their step count, getting 10 to 15,000 steps a day, you'll feel that. Like you'll feel that in your feet. You'll feel that in your how hungry you feel. But the thing is like, you don't necessarily want to eat more food as you're getting more steps. You want to kind of be diligent about that in the beginning. That can help move the needle in terms of your body composition.
Also, I mean, real simple Google search of like how many miles, or how many steps in a mile, or how many calories do you burn when you walk a mile or two. And you can just start out by saying, I'm just going to walk an extra mile, like whatever amount of steps that is. And that's probably only a few thousand steps. So you don't have to all of a sudden double or triple out of nowhere, but it does need to be significant enough to where you're actually burning a decent amount of calories.
And someone, Rock Humper mentioned 15,000 plus steps a day. We got jobs, people, man. I know people that have jobs that get 15 to 20,000 steps a day. It's just like walking isn't something you have to do in solitude. You can walk with your spouse. You can walk with a friend. Walking is just a good habit to have.
You can be on a call. You can be on a work call. You can walk for lunch. You can walk in the middle.
You can walk with your kids.
Yeah, like I said, like I'm not too far removed from that, but I know for sure, at least in California, like you get 2 hours and you get a 15-minute break. I was walking during my 15-minute break. 2 hours after that, you get an hour or half an hour lunch break. I would eat and I would walk the rest of that. 2 hours from then, I would get another 15-minute break. So there's definitely some windows, and I know there's times where you're like, dude, fuck this, I just want to play on my phone or something. But like you'd feel so much better after that walk. And it's just a matter of making that decision to get those extra steps in.
And if you're like if you're somebody that typically gets in a lot of steps already, then you could say, fuck what we're saying, because it might not really be feasible. Like Kenny gets 30,000 steps a day just from working, because he works in a warehouse. So he's moving around all the time. It might be a little more difficult for those people to get the extra steps. And at that point, maybe the time commitment to go out and like walk even further just isn't really worth it. And maybe you have to think of some other type of exercise.
Weighted vest, maybe?
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Next super chat from Kenny G. This is a general question, but Atlas, you do wear Vibram 5 fingers. He asks, what are the benefits of barefoot training?
So, I mean,
and how long have you been wearing those shoes anyway?
It's probably about 4 or 5 years now.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I got into them kind of by accident. I took a vacation to Hawaii and I was just wearing the water shoes just because, you're going to go in water, but I ended up hiking in them and it's like, oh, wow, this is a lot more fun. I feel the ground. This is cool.
Yeah.
So then I bought some Vibrams and I've been hooked. As far as training, it's kind of like, for your deadlifts, you want to have a, low drop shoe. Just you want to be as low to the ground as possible. So that, that's beneficial, but it's kind of hit or miss whether they're more beneficial or less for certain exercises, because something like trying to put a plate under your heels for squats, that's going to be a little more uncomfortable, but then a lot of other lifts you're going to feel more planted in the ground. So it really depends. But I mean, we talked about walking, getting your steps in. I mean, you're going to definitely build up the muscles of your foot. When I started wearing them, I was sore in places I did not know I had.
Same.
My toes are more splayed out, but really I just noticed such a practical benefit in traction. Like when I'm going up a steep, muddy hill or something, I can feel my toes searching for traction. Like it feels like I have traction control on a car, I'm starting to slip and I catch that slip just a moment before I actually lose it. And, sometimes I'll have a toddler on my back. So it's kind of important that I be able to do that. And, it kind of builds a little bit of a bond with the shoes when you should have slipped with your toddler on your back, but you didn't. You're like, okay, I'm going to keep wearing the shoes, Let
me ask you this, man. Has the way you've lifted changed? Because I noticed that, when I do things with lifting now, I root my feet into the ground. Whereas before, when I didn't have that type of control over my feet, I would just kind of like plant my feet and lift. Do you get what I mean by rooting your feet into the ground? Like I never used to do that before I started actually paying attention to the strength of my feet.
I haven't paid attention to that. I should check to see if I do that. I know when I'm doing calf raises, I know I'm much more aware of what my feet are doing.
Yeah.
Really squeezing in with my toes. So definitely when I'm doing calf training, I notice the difference there. But I need to pay attention to that. That's something I should look into.
Okay. All right. Now, Gunpowder asks, what temperature and how long do you each cold plunge at? 45 for 3 minutes. Not every single day. Might be twice a week, certain weeks, or 4 times a week on some weeks. But yeah.
Mine's at 50 right now, but I did turn it down the other day. So next time I get it, it's going to be brutal.
How cold?
I just turned it down all the way. So it's just like whatever.
38 or some shit?
Yeah, whatever that number is. I just heard Rogan talking about it again, and I was like, I don't really want to do that, so maybe I should try it. I've done it before, but I just found like tremendous benefit of just cold plunging, period. I think that I think people get caught up a little too much in the nuances of everything, and the details are probably more important as you've been doing it longer, but I dig it. How about you? Do you do any cold plunging?
Well, in the summer when I go swimming, the ocean feels pretty cold. It takes me a second to get into it, so that's about as cold as I get. I haven't really. I don't want to get into cold water particularly much. I know some people find benefit in it, but like I mean, you guys, I feel like that is something for people that are at the point like you are, where you're doing the side quest. You've done everything. Powerlifting, running,
could take a cold
jiu-jitsu. I mean, okay, now we're doing side quests. Okay, so you need something hardcore to, get the endorphins going and have fun once you've done everything. It's a side quest. But, that being said, I do see people on social media, it's like, but that's all you do. Like that's okay, come on. Is there anything we should do first? I'm not bashing it, but I do think with some people, it's like maybe there's some other things you should be focusing on first.
How does your body feel every day? Like, because the movements and the lifts that you do, like I'm thinking like, man, that would twist me up pretty good.
I mean, whatever I worked out, I'm usually pretty sore. Definitely after a back day, I'm feeling pretty beat up, but not necessarily in a bad way. If it's like, if I'm having specific joint pain, it's like, okay, I shouldn't have done that. Let me figure out what I did wrong. I used to be, young and stupid. I would just, let me just be tougher next time. But now it's like, oh, wait, I have joint pain. Okay, and let me address that. I need to make sure that doesn't develop into something more. But usually it's muscular, and we want that. That's fine.
You don't feel like you need a lot of recovery modalities to recover from your training because of the way that you're training and maybe what you've learned over the years? You learned how to like kind of navigate and traverse that territory?
I mean, to be honest, the only thing that I really use is time. I mean, I'm not super high on frequency. Now, I usually try to work out every day, but it's going to be different stuff. I'm training every day to get the variety, and not necessarily because I think I have to train the same muscles every day. So I just try to give it time. Like with a lot of
diet, sleep, hydration, right?
Right. And I mean, with a lot of stuff I do, I find that I need to use an exercise rotation, kind of like the whole conjugate thing. You're not doing the same thing every time, because you can train the same muscle groups all the time. But if you try to go really hard on the exact same exercise, there are certain stress points you'll overdo. But if you put a little bit of rotation, 2 or 3 weeks, then, you can recover, everything. You'll be perfectly fine. So that's more what I do. I haven't found anything that, like, I would say, okay, if I do this recovery modality, now I can repeat the same workout in like 5 days instead of 7. I haven't found anything that lets me do that personally.
Gotcha. And by the way, guys, at the end of this, we will be giving away some kicks from Vivo, who actually has 25% off this month of April. So we'll be giving away some barefoot shoes from Vivo, some Joy Mode, which, I mean, if there's any guys in the audience, you want to harden up your dick, that's some good stuff. And there's nothing in it. It's literally just citrulline, malate, arginine. It's all stuff that's not going to affect you negatively.
Put the doing noise in there, Andrew.
Yeah, you can bleep the harden out, whatever I said. And then some hostage tape. No. Okay, so you can breathe better while you sleep so that you'll wake up with an erection rather than waking up flaccid. We got
and that way no one can stick, never mind.
Exactly. No one can stick there, while you're sleeping. We don't want that either. Okay. Next question from Kevin Kim. Best exercises for tight hamstrings. I've been incorporating elephant walks, but I wanted to hear about more.
Well, I mean, elephant walks are honestly a great choice. It's funny. I've actually loaded them. I've actually loaded them in the Zercher position. That works very nicely.
Do you stand on top of something and like load it in a bent position, or how are you loading it?
Sometimes, yeah. Okay. That's probably more than I can get into with just this question. But yeah, sometimes I would do that. So yeah, elephant walks. You can also just use a load and not what do we call these? Just like in range extensions where you're not bending each leg separately. You're just bending both of them with a weight. I'll do this. Okay. I'll do this in the Zercher position sometimes, where I'll just be kind of in what you might see is the bottom of a Jefferson curl, and bend the legs and extend down a little bit further, and just come up trying to keep the as much extension keep the weight as low as possible, get as much range out of the hamstrings as possible. That's really helpful. But yeah, I mean, elephant walks are obviously well known for a reason. Also, I mean, Romanian deadlifts are great for hamstrings. You can do single leg variations. You can do variations with 1 foot, like a kind of a 1 foot elevated. Like I said, now we're getting out of Romanian deadlift territory, but whatever. You can do like a loaded stretch on them with 1 foot elevated. That's brutal, very effective.
You could do staggered. Did you mention staggered stance?
I haven't yet, but that's a good one too. Yeah.
Do you mess around like when you're trying to think of like, I want better mobility to be able to get down into position for some of these other lifts, and you're maybe targeting the hamstrings? Are you thinking about where your back is? Because like on like an RDL or something like that, maybe people want to kind of push their butt up, push their hips back, right? And, your back and your hamstrings seem to be super connected. Like if you're extended pretty hard, then the hamstrings seem to fire much earlier. As an example, like if you do an RDL real hard and try to keep your back real flat, you might only be able to go down to like mid shin, as opposed to if you let your back go the way that you might do it. Do you kind of think about the spine a little bit in terms of the hamstrings?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm a stickler for that back extension to put all the stress on the hamstrings with Romanian deadlifts. I mean, my RDLs are very light. I don't go heavy on them. I just really focus on putting all the stress on the hamstrings. Mind muscle connection. Some people say it's pointless, and I think in some exercises you can make yourself feel like you're doing something and you're not. But when you're dealing with something like a Romanian deadlift, where you're trying to lengthen the I mean, you want to pay attention to what your muscles are doing on that one too. You definitely do.
Did you have your kids help you set this one up?
No, it's self-loaded.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, that was a little show off for Rascal Apparel. I was wearing their performance enhancing denim there, so I wanted to show off
could,
show off the capabilities.
Could cut the pants out and then sun the butthole. You know, this could be a whole practice that you kind of hit all in one thing at one time.
You know,
do you sun your butthole?
I don't. If that's what I need to do to be healthy, I believe I may just stay unhealthy. I'm.
Dude, the fucking
You won't be welcome
test increase.
You won't be welcome in the parking lot
crazy.
anymore. You do have a blanket down, which is helpful.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Otherwise, I'd go in looking like I just climbed out of a chimney.
This is from Connor Childerell's quick super chat. Atlas, any unilateral lifts that you could recommend?
Oh, tons. I mean, where do you want me to start? I mean, if you're looking at something, more for the back, I mean, a one-hand deadlift is a really great way to start. The one-hand deadlift is just a good way to understand, picking something up off the ground one-handed. You can progress from that into one-hand snatches, which I think are a very underrated lift because it's got a very low skill ceiling in terms of like kind of your minimum viable technique level. You don't need to be that good to just lift a heavy bar up, or dumbbell or what have you, up one-handed real fast. Like it's got a fairly minimal skill level. You can get some very useful training on the one-hand snatch, without being a full-on Olympic lifter. On the other hand, it goes all the way to possibly the highest skill level lift ever, perhaps.
You're absorbing a lot of force. Like even some of the lifts I saw you do today, I was like, wow, he's really absorbing and then transferring that weight.
Yeah, I mean, when you get into some of what the old timers were doing, it's incredible what they were absorbing. I mean, Charles Rigoleau, I'm probably butchering that, French lifter, set the world record on the one-hand snatch with I believe it was 263, I believe. 263, yeah. It was and there's actually video of him performing it. I don't think it's the world record, but there's video of his technique, and it's just incredible how quick he is because he's obviously he's snatching it up high, but then he's just dipping super low. He's combining a squat and kind of a side bend. So his torso's been off to the side and he's squatting and just gets super low and just lightning quickness. So, I mean,
yeah.
Oh, perfect. That's it. Yeah.
Dude, you need to get one of these outfits. These are bitching. Look at that.
Yeah. Now he's doing the jerk there. That one's hard. The one-hand jerk I have yet to figure out. But yeah, that one-hand snatch, I mean, it's so cool to watch just how quick he is.
Get the shorts up that high, you'll be way stronger.
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh, he had a robe. He had a robe.
Dude, that robe was
He had somebody
that
on
was
robe.
sick.
He had like a butler. Well, no wonder why he's so strong.
Yeah, look how jacked he is. Yeah, it looks sick. I mean, that
is so impressive how mobile. Like Jesus, he's squatting way down underneath it like that.
It's just that combination of
super jacked.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's jacked. He's got tendon strength and he's got mobility. Each of those abilities by themselves is helpful, but when you combine them all together, you get things that are just crazy. I believe a big Russian strongman tried to beat that record recently. He didn't quite get it. He got very close actually, but didn't quite get it. So that's a record that's lasted I think over 100 years now. It's just incredible what you like when you have that total development, not just muscle, not just strength, but also mobility, all of it blended together and with a ton of skill. I mean, you can just do incredible things.
You and your ladies had an awesome night. You got dinner or you just came back from the gym and it's time for that fun time. But you look down at your willy and, well, it's not working the way it should. Where's that blood flow? Well, that's where Joy Mode comes in. And I can read you these ingredients right off the bat because they're all natural ingredients: L-citrulline, arginine nitrate, Panax ginseng root, and vitamin C. The thing about Joy Mode is you just slip this baby into a little bit of water, drink it in 45 minutes later. When you're getting ready to go to the Pound Town, you will be ready to rock. And you know what I mean by rock. Joy Mode's really awesome because there's a lot of things that people promote as far as sexual wellness tools, but there's a lot of weird ingredients in there. These are all natural ingredients that's going to help your own production of blood flow. Stick it in some water. 60 minutes later, you're going to be able to stick it into something else. Joy Mode's your way to go. Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, that's over at usejoymode.com/powerproject. And at checkout, enter promo code POWERPROJECT to save 20% off your entire order. Again, usejoymode.com/powerproject, promo code POWERPROJECT, links in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
How long have you been lifting like this for?
In this style, with most of it, I would say 4 years. That's when I started doing most of this. I'd gotten into some of the more meathead stuff before. I did some one-hand deadlifts. I did some Zercher squats, but not. you know, I would just occasionally go eagle lift with them. I'd just go max out on the searcher squat. And
do you think before that is what maybe built like a foundation for you? Because you're a big guy, you have a big upper body. And like, you know, I know the exercises that you're doing, I know that they work everything. But you have a big upper body, you got wide shoulders. Did you used to do like a lot of bodybuilding stuff for like many years?
Well, I mean, it's kind of the same stuff everyone does. I'm not trying to say I built my whole physique off this stuff. I did the same stuff everyone does: bench press, squats, deadlifts. Although I feel like deadlifts were of those were my best lift. Still nothing very good, but I didn't even start doing them until later until I think 4 years in. I actually started with power cleans because I was in a my college was small enough that the football team worked out with everybody else, so I just kind of copied what the football players were doing. They were doing power cleans, so I did too, and I got a lot of good training out of them. My technique is terrible. I'm awful at them, but that didn't stop it from working, did it? You know, it did what I needed to do. So yeah, I did all that. I did some bodybuilding, not well. I was not as attentive to form at that time. I didn't understand what it was for, you know. I tried some mind muscle connection stuff like they teach you. I just got nothing out of it. So then I decided it was stupid.
What do you mean?
Well, you know, I would try to do like curls and tricep extensions and stuff, just like really focusing on like, I'm trying to squeeze as much as possible. And even, you know, resist with the opposing muscle just to try to get a really good sensation out of it. I never, you know, with light weights to facilitate that, I didn't get much out of that. Now, as I got older, I've learned kind of the importance of mind muscle connection, but it's, you know, I use it more to, especially on like I talked about with RDLs. I'm very big on that, but now I have a goal. Like I'm using it to get that stretch in my hamstrings, like, gotcha. Or get the stretch. Like I want to make sure I'm feeling pullovers in my lats, or I want to make sure that I'm getting the incline curl, you know, I'm getting the stretch. And by the way, this is a long time ago. I asked a question. I forget where it was on Instagram somewhere. I asked you a question about bicep tendonitis, and you said do incline curls. And I don't think you knew who I was at that time. It was just a random question, but that was good advice. Incline curls became a staple because I had been dealing with bicep tendonitis issues. I just brought it up. I just wanted to say that. But anyway, So I've learned the importance of it. But it isn't just like just take any exercise and just squeeze really hard instead of focusing on progression.
I think a lot of times people give up on stuff a little too early, you know, and especially when we're younger. You know, you might read something or hear something and you're like, oh, let me just, rather than like go up and wait, let me just try to do the same weight for multiple sets with the absolute correct form, you know, maybe a 3 or 4 second descent and just kind of just controlling the weight, you know, like kind of owning the weight. And then you try it and it just doesn't like play to your psyche that well. And you're like, oh, I'll try it one more time, you know, and then you just kind of stop.
Right.
Not realizing like, man, there's so much benefit in that. I also think there's some benefit too to training a little differently and saying F it here and there and just sort of going for it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that here and there, but I think that when we're younger, if we could just stick to a couple things a little bit longer, it would really pay off.
Right. Not think you know everything right off the start. Like, okay, I know all the secrets of how to work out. You got to experiment, try new things, you know, try different stuff. But yeah, definitely also stick with things, or maybe figure out what they're for before you say, oh, like I did. Maybe I should have figured out what it's actually useful for before I just threw it away and said, I'll never do this again. But you know, you live, you learn.
5 a.m. asks, how to exercise intra post hangover. Well, first off, get some electrolytes in your system. That should help you out a bit. But intra hangover?
I think you're asking the wrong group.
Yeah.
Well, I can speak to that. You just have to go out. I mean, you chose to drink it. Time to get in and do it anyway. I mean, now it's just not going to be as nice, but you better do it.
This guy's very jacked too, so I wonder why he would spurred it to ask this specific question.
Oh, you know, well, okay. So you made that decision. Now you gotta
the
sleep
only
and work
cure
out.
I'm aware of for hangover is to drink more.
What's that called? There's
hair of the dog.
There we go. We go.
I don't recommend working out drunk, but you can try it. You can try it. Let me know how it works.
Oh man, Amanda Serrano asks, cool info. Any other loaded exercises that are beneficial for the lower back?
I mean, tons of them. Loaded lower back exercises. I mean, we've got anything from, you know, if you have the mobility to make it work, you can do Zercher deadlifts. That's just simply a deadlift with the elbows hooked under the bar at the floor. That's lots of range of motion, for the low back, but also it's just a basic exercise that you can just rep out on. It's not super technical. It's just a deadlift with a short arms, basically.
I have a quick question for you. And don't lose your train of thought. You started with the Zercher deadlift, but do you have because I know some people when they bend down to do that, right? They're not sure, how should I brace? How should I breathe? Because when you're doing a squat, you brace, squat down, come up. But when you're in a bent position, what does your breathing look like? What do you do?
I mean, that's an interesting question.
Okay.
No, but I have thought about how to explain it. I mean, the best way I can explain it is just do the best you can. You're in a different position. It is going to be, you're not going to get the same kind of brace you would under a squat. So you just kind of have to take your breath and brace as best you can in that position. It's not going to be perfect, but it doesn't have to be. Like if we're talking about, I mean, with the Zercher deadlift, you definitely want to brace, but yeah, you're not going to get as good of a brace as you would if you were in a squat. But at the same time, you don't need one, and you want one, but you're not trying to keep your torso completely rigid because your torso it's not going to stay rigid. So you kind of do the best you can. It's not going to be at that level that it would be if you were able to keep your torso locked the whole time, but it doesn't need to be because the loading is lighter. You're in a deeper position. You're not going to be, unless you're an absolute freak. A couple guys have got up to over 500 pounds, but that's not going to be the case for most of us. Most of us are going to be using fairly light loads. I mean, relative to what we might be able to do in a back squat or a conventional deadlift. So that's kind of the thing that needs to be, balanced out. I mean, yes, some of these movements look scary, but like look how much weight. I mean, y'all have done weight I can't even think about on the conventional deadlift and squat. It's like, humans were not, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, humans weren't designed to ever lift that kind of weight because there weren't barbells. No one would ever lift that much weight unless someone had invented the barbell. So it's like, the weight that you guys, and I'm not saying you guys shouldn't do that. It's great to do powerlifting, but there's risk with some of the shorter range motion too. And like 300 pounds is not it's not like 700 pounds or whatever. Hope that answers the question. But you can't brace quite as much.
I think when you're trying to do something like a deadlift or some sort of exercise where you're having to bend over like that, what I found to work to be able to get air into my stomach is to straighten the legs out. So if I just straighten my legs out, I'm able to breathe through my stomach a little bit easier, as opposed to like if I'm already like super squatted down, I might not have an opportunity to breathe. So maybe, in this case where someone's doing something like a Zercher deadlift, they can have their legs kind of straight up and down at first, breathe, and then maybe kind of squat into it and pick it up.
That actually makes sense. I haven't. That's actually something I should probably try to incorporate. That's actually a good idea. Like that would actually help.
All right. So Valerie Page, should I drop the weight if I'm having to take a lot of mid-set breaks or lower the volume, looking to get stronger and more defined? So looks like she's doing sets of movements and she has to like pause because she's not strong enough for the weight she's working with during the set. I'd say drop the weight so you can get through the set, unless you want to do sets of lower repetitions. That would be my suggestion. Yeah.
I'd say that's a good rule of thumb for bodybuilding or powerlifting. If you're doing sets of 12 and you're trying to get through 3 to 4 sets of 12 reps, and you get to your third set and you're starting to miss some repetitions where you need a longer break, definitely dropping the weight would be a good idea. But also, if you're doing a 5x5 and you start to miss your reps, you're starting to miss out on the intent of what you were originally trying to do. And whenever you start to miss out on the intent that you're trying to execute, then you need to kind of like change your plans a little bit.
Yeah, Atlas, do you ever like just bro out with any movements, period? Like just get high reps and you're just like, I'm going to chase the pump today.
Oh yeah. I mean, I do that a lot actually. I mean, sometimes I do it with exercises that people wouldn't think to do that on, like Zercher deadlifts. I mean, I'll do 20 rep sets of that. Just trying to take it to failure with high reps. But
that's got to be tough.
It's not as bad as you might think. But yeah, I mean, it's a little tough. But the thing is, with something like that, you're a lot less likely to get an injury than if you were just going to max out on it, and you're going to get a better muscle size response. I mean, there's all sorts of debate over what rep range is best for muscle, but just my practical take on it, and I think a lot of people would probably agree with, is it's a lot easier to get that progress that you need for good, good hypertrophy training when you're at a little bit of a higher rep range, because you can squeeze out that extra rep. You can maybe add 5 pounds without it, killing it. Whereas, if you're doing really low reps, you might have your plan, you go to lift the weight and it doesn't even come off the ground. Now your progress is all messed up. So I do like to use the high reps.
This is a good promotion of your program. Look at that back.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's
what a difference a spray tan makes. Wow.
I mean, I definitely had better lighting in the second picture. Although I had one that I did like 2 parking lot pictures and it still looked like a crazy transformation. But
it's definitely more muscled though. Absolutely.
For sure.
The thing was, I have like by far the lowest deadlift here, but still I was pulling a decent amount of weight as far as conventional deadlifts, and my back did not look anything like it did, just because I wasn't doing that same kind of range of motion. So it's not just like, okay, these lifts look cool. Like I want to show people, like, for what they do, like they put on some muscle. They're effective in multiple domains.
Have you found anything like interesting about some of these lifts that you're doing? Have you, in the last several years since you've adopted some of these movements, have you like ran or sprinted or jumped or did something where you're like, oh wow, I'm a little faster or stronger, or maybe even like you went back and did a conventional lift like a deadlift, bench, or squat, and you found that you were like quite a bit stronger than maybe you thought because you weren't actually training for that?
So I had the only case as far as movement. I mean, I never measured my. It's a mistake, but you never find out. I think I never measured any any sprint times beforehand, so I wouldn't know. I wouldn't be able to give myself before and after. But one thing that I have found, I noticed this on rough terrain. We already talked about it a little bit with the Vibrams, especially like slipping on ice and stuff. Getting into some kind of impromptu sissy squats and little impromptu Cossack squats, some little emergency pistols and all. Like, that's nice because my knees aren't getting beat up the way they used to. I even had one situation where that kind of iconic little shot that Ben Patrick did where he like jumps off some high platform and just like goes down into a sissy squat into a reverse Nordic to just demonstrate his knees. Well, I actually did that completely on accident. I missed the step with my I had my kid in the carrier. I think she was about 1 at the time. So good little bit of weight. She I think she was in close to the 99th percentile for weight at that time. And so I missed a step on coming down the stairs. And I can't bend forward to catch myself or anything because I've got my kid. I've got to protect her. So I ended up just kind of like missing the step and having to just kind of like eat a sissy squat into a Nordic at the bottom of the steps, just like slam down on my knees. And that was rough. But like the next day, my knees didn't even hurt. So like that, I will say there's some, you're not going to be bulletproof. I don't want to get shot in the knee, but you can definitely benefit from some of this stuff. So I wish I had it on video because it would have been like a perfect advertisement for, you guys need to do your knee stuff. As far as the conventional lifts that I've come back and checked, I haven't really tried to max out on any of them. I mean, I just haven't tried to max. But as far as conventional deadlift, I have set some rep PRs with 0 practice. Not huge rep PRs, but
it'd just be interesting if you tried something like punching a heavy bag for a handful of weeks, and once you bring up that skill level, I'm wondering, like I'm just imagining that you have to be stronger through like the torso, and you're probably more explosive and stuff.
I see carryover all the time. I'll hit PRs on lifts that I haven't trained all the time just from other stuff. I know just out of nowhere, we talked about Turkish get-ups earlier. I'd been stuck a couple of years ago. I'd been stuck on I think I was stuck on 165 for a long time. I kept wanting to hit 170, just never quite got it. Then I just completely took off from it for a while, but I was doing a lot of freestanding ring push-ups where you're just balancing on the rings.
Ooh, nice.
It looks like a little stunt, but I've actually found it fairly beneficial. It's easy on the shoulders if that's something you need. I was doing the incline variation. You can even get a nice little stretch, kind of like an incline bench press, but you're also having to stabilize a little bit. And then I found that was also building my wrist strength. So I just came back and just randomly smoked 175 on the Turkish get up. zero practice because, this other modality was training the exact capability I need. So it's, I see stuff like that happen all the time. It's really cool. I think I've actually gotten to the point where I almost prefer that to peaking, because you can practice something up to a high peak. I mean, any strength sport, a part of the skill of that sport is just peaking up the lift so that it's at the best possible place on that day. But then obviously you're going to fall off that peak. So if you can just see progress without even practicing, it's like, okay, general capabilities are being built up. And I really like that.
Gotcha. All right. 2 more questions. This one's quick from Nick. What's your denim of choice?
Denim of choice, Rascal Performance Denim.
Okay. Rascal Performance. I'm guessing it stretches a bit.
It stretches quite a bit. Anything that I can do, the jeans can do.
And I'll mention this. I mean, I don't really wear jeans much anymore, but I got a big ass and big quads, and the normal jeans that fit for me were like Levi 541s, but Rascal's probably better.
Oh yeah, they fit very well. You can't see it in these because these are a little darker, but if I wear the light wash, I mean, you can actually see quad definition through them, which is, and maybe I should get a bigger size, but I mean, they fit at the waist, so
that's good.
Yeah, no, they're very good.
And then this question from Jonas Dahl. And Mark, do you wear jeans? Andrew, do you wear jeans? I don't see y'all wear jeans really.
Yeah, it's pretty rare for me.
Yeah.
It's like sandpaper. I don't. It's just If I have to wear jeans, I'm like kind of upset.
Yeah. All right. And
these would change your mind. They're comfortable. I wear them for everything.
I don't have anything cool like that. I'm just like, I just have regular like store bought jeans. Nothing fancy.
That would upset me too. Yeah.
Jonas Dahl asks, do you guys find as your training age increases, you fall into more daily undulating periodization, DUP, and are you still very periodized and specific? So DUP pretty much is like, you have a strength day, then you have a volume day, and then maybe you have a speed day, then back to a strength day. You undulate the type of volume you're doing on a specific day of training. That's all DUP kind of means.
I'll just start. I'll say I really just make stuff up. I'm not competing in anything. And even when I was competing, I sort of made stuff up too. But I literally go by how I feel. Mm-hmm. I go by like time and stuff like that. Today we were doing some stuff out in the gym. I was like, let me lift some sandbags for a little bit. But it wasn't like, I wouldn't even call it like a workout. It wasn't like a full workout. I would say I lift with weights probably legitimately like an intense workout 2 or 3 times a week. And then there's probably 1 or 2 extra times a week where it's sort of just like messing around like I did today. But yeah, it's not real like scheduled. It's just literally by how I feel in accordance to running. And then I run about 4 or 5 days a week.
Right. I mean, for me, same thing. I'm not competing in anything. So, I think a lot of that does come more into play when you're trying to prepare specific lifts for a competition.
You have to be real thoughtful.
You have to get that practice, but you can't always be, training them at the same intensity. So you have to find ways to, train them, different ways so not to burn yourself out. It's a lot less necessary for me because I'm not training for anything specific either. And really I'm just using a lot more exercise variety. Not that I'm just doing random stuff. I'm keeping consistent, trying to progress them. But I mean, the way I train any given lift or exercise is far more determined, but just by the specifics of that exercise and, what that exercise needs and what it's good for. So I'm not looking at like general, okay, I want to train this one. I want to just train high volume, or I just want to train fast. I kind of give each exercise what that specific exercise requires, if that makes sense.
At this point for me, I still do isolation work, but I'm not getting ready for a bodybuilding show in the next few years. I'm not doing any type of powerlifting meet, so I'm not aiming for specific numbers on a squat, bench, or deadlift, but what I am doing is I'm competing in jiu-jitsu. So everything that I do in the gym is to help increase my ability to move better and be stronger through all ranges of motion, because in jiu-jitsu, you're moving in a lot of weird ranges and you need to be strong and resilient in those ranges. So the lifting I do, like isolation work helps with that, but like, the sandbag work, the kettlebell work, all these things help me become overall stronger so I can become a better grappler. That's how it's kind of changed and adjusted.
Is it sort of dictated by how you feel? Like if you come in and you're jumping rope and you're like, oh, I feel awesome, I'm going to keep, doing a bunch of, or do you have stuff like more scheduled?
No, I have certain things I'm going to be working on each day, but since we're here, I get to kind of touch these things. At home, I get to touch those things. I have a sandbag at home too. So depends on, how much energy I have to see how much I want to push it in the gym. But I'll still manage to get through all the types of movements I need to get through throughout a week.
Yeah, somebody had asked me recently about like if I'm still doing the Brig 20, and so I will still do that. But just like you, Mark, like I started the workout Sunday morning, and then I had to get stuff done, and I finished it this morning.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 2-3 days. I don't even know what today is, but yesterday was jujitsu, so. That's like the thing is like that's the cardio or that's the harder training, and then the lifting is just to make me feel better.
I like that, and I love the fact that I think a lot of people sometimes feel bad about stuff like that, and I don't think you should. I think it's just get like whatever way you can get to it, and if you get to bits and pieces of it, it's not like the perfect workout.
Mm-hmm.
You still worked out.
Yeah, the cool thing was that like I had like 2/3 of the workout left. So that left me with time to work on like some back and shoulder mobility, right? So like it just gave me more opportunity to do more cool stuff in the gym.
Yeah. Right. Would you be willing to give away a couple books?
Absolutely.
To some of these people we got in the pot? Maybe, I don't know, how many winners do we have?
3.
3? So, willing to give away 3 books?
Absolutely.
So just give them to each person so they'll win this and something else.
All right. So
each person
you want to give away
win.
3 things, but each person will win like Vivo and a book.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
It's a hell of a day to be on the live stream, guys.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit more about your book.
Okay, so the goal for this book, so like I said, a lot of this stuff that I've gotten into has come from the older traditions of the Bronze Era, which I think is defined as like the 1800s through I guess the 40s maybe. And then the Silver Era, I think usually would be defined as like the 40s to, usually it's considered to end in 58, which is when Diana Ball hit. So I guess that's kind of it's kind of a good end point. Now a lot of people will say, oh, the Silver Era guys were all on steroids because testosterone had been synthesized, and there's always been conspiracy theories. I mean, you'll see some guys who were lifting before they'd even invented it in the 30s, or they'll say, oh, well, they must have been early test subjects for it. It's crazy out there. There's conspiracies that, so there were some early products. It's very unclear how well they were known about, and it certainly doesn't seem like anyone was experimenting with them early on. And if they had, all evidence would point to them immediately discontinuing because. From what I understand, the product is absolute trash. It's going to give you very little results and tons of side effects. That's not to say these guys were, morally pure or anything. It's just there was not an effective product for them to use. The product they had was trash, and it would have just, if anyone did try it, they would have been like, "This is horrible. I'm immediately gonna stop this." The only people that were using it at that, earlier, and this was only in the early 50s, was the Soviet weightlifters, and obviously, the Soviet Union was not known.
Russians.
They were not known. Yeah, they were not known for their, deep concern for human life and well-being at that time. So, anyway, but I think that's usually when the boundaries are. I went on too long with that, but that's usually when the boundaries are drawn. So I'm exploring the older weightlifting traditions from the Bronze and Silver eras, and rather than just write a history book, because there are plenty of good history books out there, I wanted to just look at them from the perspective of a modern lifter, just trying to practically find what's most valuable. So I put in, detailed descriptions of all the lifts, and, I wanted to put out, the best detail, the most detail that I possibly could on not just, how to perform them, but why you might want to. But then more importantly, I tried to put in a section comparing them to modern lifts and seeing where they fit in. So I tried to rank them, like which ones fill holes that, more popular modern training methods are not addressing, and which ones, maybe there are modern methods that are better. I don't want to hype everything up that's old. It's not about whether it's old or new. It's about whether it's effective. And I think some of these lifts absolutely do fill holes in modern training. Some of them, we probably have more effective methods now. So that's what I want to communicate, and just like help people to, put the best parts into their training and find what's more applicable to you. I think there are some that maybe some people who are more into athleticism might want. Like I mentioned, the one-hand power snatch. That's something that I think, probably a lot of people who are like, do I really want to have my athletes learn, the full snatch? That's a big investment. Should I do that? Should I not? Should I just do, some easier variation? Well, that is an easier variation, right? So, I'm trying to basically direct people to what's going to be of most interest to you. If you're a bodybuilder, I'll let you know this is good for developing this muscle. If you're into something else, etc. But that's basically what the book is about.
Did your IG handle come from the famous book?
It did.
Or you're not aware of that?
It's funny. I didn't even think I'd be doing, it seriously. It's funny. My wife, I used to like scroll on my wife's Instagram because I didn't have one. I just like stuff. And she said, you can't like stuff on my profile. I didn't like
all
it.
those asses on my profile.
I think it was, yeah. And so I was like, fine, I'll make one of my own.
He's going to try to talk his way out of it. And then he just said,
no, it was more political, but I don't want to say that because I don't want to get you guys. I don't want to say politics in an election year. God knows what they'll. Anyway, I'm gonna stop talking now. But So I was like, okay, well, I think I knew I was going to post some lifting stuff because I lift. One of my favorite exercises is the Power Shrug, which is probably the most controversial exercise I do. So I was just like, okay, well, what's a little pun on a Power Shrug? And it's like Atlas Power Shrug. It was a bad choice because now everybody thinks I'm like an Ayn Rand person, and I'm not. But I like Power Shrugs because they're, I like them. They're good at making.
I was trying to look up the book, and I'm like, they don't have any correlation to each other.
No, it's like it's like if you want to get big traps, like lift heavy weight with shrugs. That's why I. But maybe I could have. Obviously, I didn't know that a bunch of people were going to be seeing me. That was going to be their first impression of me. Is like, oh, this guy likes Ayn Rand, and I'm not completely bashing or saying like there's no merit there, but I'm. You know how people
There's not
do.
a connection. Yeah.
You know how people do.
Do you have any videos of him doing the shrugs?
Oh God.
Because I think when you do your shrugs, it looks kind of crazy, right?
People are going to get so mad if you show those. People are going to get so mad.
By the way, I want to add in real quick before you guys leave, because I know some of the winners, somebody wins, they're going to leave before they get the info. Please, if you win, add me on Discord, send your email address, your mailing address, and your name, because he's going to have to send you the book and I'm going to have to send you the product. And Jesus Christ, what is going on here? That's a lot of weight.
Yeah, it's a Power Shrug.
That is a Power Shrug.
That
you had long hair.
Yeah, that was an old video. I was probably like 25 at that time.
Oh wow.
Dude, your hair is amazing.
Still in jeans too.
The caption's actually real. I feel like I did a really good job with the caption, but nobody read it because I tried to trick everybody.
You are a long caption writer. You are a storyteller on your Instagram, bro.
Good for you. That's great.
This one it didn't work with because I tried to like clickbait people by saying I hurt myself and then read the caption. And my like little story, what I actually hurt myself with was that this exercise, performing Power Shrugs in this cheat way was really effective. It actually made my traps big. Mm-hmm. So I thought, okay, that's how, let me look for, so the secret is just finding ways to move lots of weight, right? So then I tried to apply that to a bunch of other stuff and wasted a ton of time. So that's how it hurt me, right? But the reality is, like, the cheat reps, for whatever reason, work really, really, really well when it comes to Power Shrugs. And I'm not the only one who says this. A bunch of people agree with me with big traps.
How much weight is that?
I don't know, like eight plates, I think.
Yeah.
That's more
8 or 9. I don't know.
65.
I think it was like 8 or 9. It's whatever.
1, 2, 3,
9 plates. 855.
Yeah, and I mean the thing is, like people who want to have like grand unifying theories of lifting. Like, I know how lifting is supposed to be done. This is the principle. Like, you must do everything with good technique. No, technique is stupid. You just lift heavy weight. You can't do grand unifying principles. Like, the reality is these work, but if you try that principle on virtually anything else, you're going to get no results. You're not going to get your cheat curls. I mean, some people like cheat curls, but most people are probably not going to get huge biceps off cheat curls. But it works for this exercise because there's a lot more specificity than people think. It works with traps, I think, maybe because I'm just making stuff up, but it's what people say. There's a big weighted stretch mediated hypertrophy. You're getting a big weighted stretch, but the reality is it just seems like weight works for traps. Some people build them with farmer's walks, micro contractions with heavy weight. Some people are strong enough to deadlift heavy enough to build big traps. I'm not, so I have to lift weight heavy other ways. But it worked for me. My traps got big specifically from that exercise. I'm not saying that's how you should do every exercise. It works on that particular one. But people are going to get mad about it because it it doesn't conform with what they think exercise should look like.
I love the time commitment of an exercise like that.
Oh, dude.
It takes forever to put that amount of weight on. And it looked like you had knee wraps on. And the knee wraps are over top of the jeans. That is the greatest video I think we've ever played.
I was young and stupid. My knees are better now. And I think it's
incredible.
I pretty much stopped training traps because I'd have to load up. It's just not worth the time commitment to load up all that weight. But they're hanging in there. They're sticking around now that I built them.
All right, let's pick out some of these winners here. See if you can pick the first.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Winner 1. You win a pair of Vivos and a book.
Say.
You can hand it back to him if you want.
Yeah.
He'll figure it out.
Kenny
to
G.
read it?
I
Kenny
think
G.
he's saying Kenny G.
Yeah, Kenny G. All right, Kenny G. Make sure you're part of the Discord. Message me, Nsima. Email address, name, and mailing address.
Oh, God. Are we still doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Amanda Carano.
Amanda Serrano.
Serrano. My bad.
Hey.
Okay. Same deal, Amanda. Message, and we'll get you a book and some. Wait.
We didn't say.
We need to give her hostage tape, not joy mode. Amanda Serrano will send you some hostage tape. And lastly, gunpowder.
It's gonna be.
Yeah.
What's it going to be? Gunpowder. Message me on it. Message me so you can get some joy mode in your. You'll get some joy mode and a book. Gunpowder tea. There we go.
Is there anything that guy hasn't won?
Man, I don't know. I don't think he's won joy mode. I think this is the first.
All right, there we go.
Amanda said she'll. Well, I think gunpowder's also won hostage. Amanda, do you want hostage tape or do you want joy mode? Comment below and let us know.
Might be kind of private.
She said she'll give it to the husband.
Oh, there you go.
This episode was super fun with Atlas. So check out this episode with every goddamn Dre, another functional mover, amazing genius with the kettlebells. And he'll have a lot of ideas for you to improve your functional level of fitness along with getting brutally strong. So click it.